Hi, Professor Barber. We have several questions for you to
Yes,
answer in
yes.
our interview. Sorry.
Before we start our interview, I think it's going to be better for us to introduce ourselves.
Okay.
So I will start my introduction. My name is YoungJun from South Korea, and I am the first year master student, and I'm studying from Carlos Sanchez Gutierrez. And yeah, maybe Xingyi or Jack, can you introduce yourself before we start?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Xingyi. I'm also called by Betty, and I'm a piano and composition major, sophomore bachelor degree.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Zach. I'm a first year composition undergrad, and I'm currently studying with Professor Zanmoldun.
So yes, thank you so much for, first of all, thank you so much for your time and all these beautiful pieces that you shared with us. And I'm excited, I'm personally very excited, especially, and to ask those questions to you. So we will maybe begin our questions from one of your pieces that you shared, which is Hall of Mirrors. It's going to be asked by Xingyi.
Okay.
So, first question is for a piece Hall of Mirror, which composer inspired you to use such a unique instrumentation? And yeah.
I'm not sure about the instrumentation. That was something that came up in my mind some years ago, mostly just noticing that the that glass was one of the only kinds of instruments where you could get sound from it by blowing over bottles and hitting things and by rubbing or vibrating things. And that gave me the idea to put together these instruments and go from there. So I didn't really get anything from a composer. A lot of people made comparisons to Parch, of course. Especially there was a set of hanging bells that were fairly similar to like the cloud bells in Parch's music, but actually the one of the ideas for the piece came from a book that's not very well known. I don't even remember the title of it, but I remember the last name of the author. His name is Yasser, and it's a theory book on, and it covers some microtonality. This was my first kind of foray into that realm also, so good.
Oh, that's really cool. And also, have you written other works involving the hand whistle?
I have not. The hand whistle was something that I have just practiced for many years, I think starting in 6th grade or so. Uh, some kid named Eddie showed me how to do it in homeroom in like 6th grade, and I took it from there. And it's this. You've heard that before, yeah? You've seen that before?
Yes, I can't do
So
it.
Yeah.
so it's just been something that I have done for a long, long time. So you can get like. And I can't do that too much because my kids are asleep, but you get the idea here.
Wow, cool. Um, and also, oh, someone asked that she sees that there's no actual melody in this piece, Hall of Mirrors, and the
Mhm.
melody just jumped around. So she's wondering what's in your mind when you compose such a piece, and those sounds imitating something, or just
They're they're
something
um, they're
you have.
imitating each other in lots of different ways. The way the piece is put together is kind of straight out of the Yasser book that I was telling you about. So the idea is that you have different equal temperaments that sort of approximate just intervals. And we're used to this idea, 12 divisions of the octave, 19 divisions of the octave. But it turns out also that 7 equal divisions of the octave and 5 equal divisions of the octave also kind of are somewhat approximate to just intervals. They're at least the closest thing. And there's a nice little relationship there where 5 plus 7 is 12 and 12 plus 7 is 19. And so this was a piece where I had all of these ensembles in a different temperament, and all of the material played by the kind of bowed rubbed instruments. Those are the 5-tone equal temperament. All of that material is played in exactly the same orderings, not necessarily the same, all the rhythms are different, but the orderings are the same in the little wind instruments, which are tuned to more or less 7-tone equal temperament. There's some intonation difficulties there, but what happens is that the same tuning, if you kind of base it on fifths, you get sort of like these little diatonic collections plus some other stuff. So so the whole piece is sort of self-recursive in that way. So the 5 can sort of fit almost like a pentatonic scale into a major scale, sort of. That's kind of how 5 fits into 7-tone equal temperament, and likewise 7-tone equal temperament can sort of fit as a diatonic scale into 12-tone and 12 into 19, and the electronics are playing 19. So the title of the piece is sort of both, of course, the reference to the glass, but also to the way that all of these things are reflected in subtle and different ways. This piece is a serial piece also. So each of these temperaments, I was doing some serial things together. Somebody who is used to this kind of thing may have noticed that I have 5 different sounds going on: electronics, my hand whistle, the winds, the percussion, and the bowed instruments. And there are 31 different ways to combine all of those, so into ensembles of all by themselves, which is how the piece opens, duos of the ensembles, trios, and etc. And all of those are visited once over the course of the piece. So it's a fairly long piece for that reason. I think that's about it. The the hand whistle part I didn't mention is notated strangely, and I would probably notate it differently now, but it is purely contour. It just adds complexity to the contours. So there's a great deal of play in the pitches that I visit, mostly because it's a very hard instrument to play very accurately, especially when there are wide leaps.
Yeah. Well, I guess this answered the next question that I was going to ask about how you manage the sound world of this piece. But I'm also curious, how did you manage to put in different temperament together? Like, did you face any difficulties, or what kind of method did you use to solve the
The lowest pitch I can play is about an A, and so I tuned the A the same in all of the ensembles, so that there's that one little point of reference there. And then that means that the pitches that correspond among them are going to be slightly off, but close enough to be hearable as kind of more or less the same. The piece, the theme of the pieces that I submitted here were pieces that kind of ruined my life for a little while. So this piece, I greatly underestimated the amount of time it would take to build the instruments and to compose the piece and to do the electronics. And, it was a kind of the largest scale piece that I'd ever done. And at the time, I had also just gotten engaged, but I was like, for a while there, getting like 2 hours of sleep, and uh, the my living room was covered in sawdust and like probably glass pieces at some point, because I was doing it all in my apartment. I'm sure that I woke neighbors up running a saw. At some point, I accidentally screwed a piece of wood to the floor, like all of this stuff. I was just under so much stress that eventually, like, I couldn't walk into a place like Home Depot without getting like really, really anxious. Um, so, you know, the the piece is one that I look back on very fondly. Um, like, it's almost like a child that just had a really difficult infancy or something. But building the instruments and conceiving the instruments and conceiving the sound world of the piece was a great joy, and just executing it really killed me.
Well, thank you for all the
Mhm.
work because it sounded phenomenal. And even my dog, who doesn't really care about music, she really liked it.
You know what? My dog likes Xenakis string quartets. Um, so
I also
thank
have a
you.
questions related to that piece too. I
Mhm.
mean, since a lot of instruments were built and a lot of things were not that commonly used in the orchestra, I think there must be a balancing issue in between those instruments, because since you're also using electronics, how did you manage it?
Uh, I There are things actually that I'm not that happy with in the balance. We probably should have amplified the hand whistle, for instance, and uh, we were already running up against so many time constraints and effort constraints that we just like couldn't add one more thing. Um, but the instrument that stands out the most is this little pan pipe that I made out of test tubes. It really pops out, and I kind of gave like the most melody to that piece, to that instrument as well. So in a lot of ways, it kind of competes with the hand whistle as a sort of solo instrument. And I'm kind of two different minds about it. It's sort of it is the like most overtly melodic instrument of the instruments, but it also kind of establishes this sort of quasi-diatonic sort of sound world that permeates the piece.
Cool. So now I have another question that's based on Interface Chapel.
Okay.
So, person says she loves your use of the contrabassoon. How do you use different textures and timbres to demonstrate the platonic solids, Kepler, and the solo system?
Okay, well that's a that's the entire piece. Okay, so the piece came from a bass friend of mine. He asked me to write a solo bass piece with electronics, and he said, I want you to think of it like a concerto. And the minute he said concerto, I had like this flash of imagination of like what the piece could be, like a set of instruments that usually don't play together and that are kind of situated on the stage, and they kind of come together sometimes to play some things and go elsewhere with each other to play other things. There's no actual movement on the stage, but the groupings of players moves about on the stage. And the that flash was so compelling to me that I decided I had to actually write an ensemble piece for him, and he was, of course, very happy with that idea. So this is Scott Worthington, bassist who now lives in California and is a composer as well. And so there was a lot of stuff in that question. Let me address the contrabassoon first. Um, knowing that I was going to be writing for contrabass, I wanted to have two other contrabass instruments that could sort of play a sort of supporting role and um, take a few of the solos, almost like in a I don't want to compare this piece to jazz, but it's that kind of idea. They play an obligato role. And I'm a bassoonist myself, and I've played contrabassoon a number of times. It's an instrument that I just adore. I love it. And it was great fun to write these solo. It's a very agile instrument, like way more than you might think. And I had a really good contrabassoon specialist to play the part. So the platonic solids, these are 5 different solid shapes that all have, I used to have little models of them that I could show you, and I probably should have built one. My kids have these little magnet block things that, and they like to build them. They know all of them now, and so they like to build them. Anyway, they're the ones that have all of the faces are the same, regular polygon, and they're all of the vertices are the same as well. And I also put the sphere there as well for a reason I'll tell you in a moment. The bass plays all of the platonic solids, and the way that I conceived the piece was that those could be separated out as a suite that could be played by itself in any kind of solo recital or electronic music concert or whatever. And so I've had performances, actually way more of the solo performances than ensemble performances. And in each of those is in a different temperament also. There's a lot of affinity between this piece and Hall of Mirrors. That makes it hard for the bass player, and so a lot of the extra work is done by the electronics. And this was one of the first times that I'd actually done heavy processing on an instrument, and that made it, that's what took most of my time. Again, totally underestimated the amount of time that it was going to take to do it. What else was in the question? Kepler.
And
Yeah,
solar.
Kepler and solar system, right? Okay, so I don't know where this idea came from, but I knew that there were going to be 6 movements for the bass, and I needed to find something that had like 6 things in it, because I wanted each of them to be about something. And from there, I remembered that Kepler, who was an astronomer in the Renaissance, first person who figured out that planets and other celestial bodies kind of go in their orbits on an elliptical path rather than a circular path. But before that, he had this model of the solar system where each of the orbits of the planets were sort of described by nestings of these platonic solids. And so you had these spheres, and the planet was supposed to kind of travel around the outside of the sphere. And the sphere was like exactly touching the corners of a platonic solid from the outside. And then from the inside, another sphere would be touching the middle of all of the faces. And so he thought that he could kind of explain the construction of the solar system in this sort of geometric way. It didn't work out, but it was still an interesting idea. And at the time, they thought there were 7 planets, and they kind of treated the sun and the moon also as planets. Planets just means things that move about on the sky. Wanderers is the, and Earth was not considered a planet. So there were 7 planets, 6 solids. So I needed 5 of something, which were, we usually think of 4 elements, but there's a cool thing, which is that the elements were also in the kind of uninformed science of the time. Each of the elements was supposed to have had, like, if you like went very microscopically, each of the elements was supposed to be one of the Platonic solids. So they thought that maybe fire was a tetrahedron because those are sharp and fire is sharp. And maybe water was icosahedron because it's kind of the most smooth of all of them. So they had this kind of idea that that everything in nature would kind of reflect this sort of perfection in construction. And there was an ether also that was associated with the dodecahedron. And so I just kept going down until I got to 1. So it kind of ties together sort of cosmology as it was starting to escape from the Middle Ages, and also humanity, science, all of those things. And so the piece kind of went together that way. And anytime there was an association, I had those pieces overlap in time as well. So tetrahedron and fire overlap with each other. Earth and cube overlap with each other, and so forth.
Well, it's really cool that you encompass like so much things in the music and very like interconnected. So thank you very much. And that's all the questions I have. So
Okay.
now I'll pass on to Zach.
Yeah, really interesting thing so far. I was wondering, since you've been talking about using different temperaments, like 5 and 7 and 19, which
Yeah.
all can approximate pure intervals to some extent. I was wondering if in any of the pieces that you like submitted, or in just any other pieces, if you'd ever done anything with equal temperament that purposefully wasn't in pure intervals, or
Sure.
if you sort of used that as a concept as well.
Yeah. So I wrote a dissertation on this, where I kind of generalized, I don't know what to call it now, but Schenkerian prolongation to equal temperaments so that you could create similar sorts of tonal structures. They wouldn't necessarily sound like our normal tonal music, but they would be structures where you could do similar kinds of voice leading and create similar kinds of harmonic situations. And so I definitely had done a number of little things like that in the course of writing the dissertation, just little examples. And it's not always equal divisions of the octave either. You can, the perfect 12th is something that you can divide, and perfect 5th is also something you can divide as well. So tetrahedron in this piece is 11 tones per perfect 5th. So the equivalence interval there is the perfect 5th. And I worked out the electronics so that all of the lines are also doubled at the 5th and sometimes at the 9th. But yes, I also have a piece called Barber's Dozen, which is probably my most performed piece. It's for, again, electronics and then any number of metallophones. And I give the metallophones a series of trichords. These are pitched metallophones. It was originally written for carillon, but in order to get more performances, I wanted to kind of expand that to any number of metallophones. And there's electronics in this piece that is in 13-tone equal temperament, and it has similar trichords to the sounds that are happening in the 12 tone, and so there's the correspondences are not that easy to hear, but they're there and they make up part of the fabric of the piece. And one of the cool things about doing anything microtonally this way, especially on electronics, is that you can tune the timbre also so that it matches the temperament. Which is something that I did in the with these. They were mostly bell sounds, and bell sounds are usually inharmonic to begin with. And so I just made all of the partials match the temperaments so that there was kind of a correspondence between timbre and temperament. That's actually one of the hardest things about writing any kind of microtonal music, is that mostly our instruments are not designed to be able to either get the pitches or actually to sound in the temperament very well. It's a big problem, and one that the only way that I've been able to solve it is to actually tweak the timbre to match the temperament. And I've done that a number of times in actually all of the pieces that we've that included electronics that I submitted.
So do you do that with with like electronic like synthesized voices, or do you apply like some kind of filter to an actual like physical?
Yeah, it's a really hard thing to do with uh, an actual physical thing, because you'd have to isolate all of the harmonics, and that turns out to be way more difficult than you might think, even with like really hardcore spectral tools. There's always stuff in the sound that is either not harmonic, or that or you just can't collect them all. So I suppose you could do kind of the most prominent ones and then tweak them that way. But no, with all of these, it's been synthesized sound very, very carefully, synthesized using a technique called additive synthesis, which is just putting together sine waves.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe I'll try and at some point I'll try and get a hold of that dissertation, because that sounds really interesting. My next kind of
I can
set
email
of
it to you if you'd like, or I can
yeah,
provide it. I put it on the box for everybody if everybody
Yes,
wants
please.
to see.
I
yeah,
would
I would.
really want it.
I think most of us would appreciate it if you would do
Yeah.
that.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be glad to. If I don't remember to do it, just somebody remind me, because now that I have twins in kindergarten and I forget everything all the time now. So just remind me.
Yeah. My next set of questions is about the three orchestral images.
Okay, good.
The first question is from a student who says that they like the piece, and after listening, they understand that you said that this was a turbulent time to begin with, and they're curious um, about things that you did to overcome the difficulties at the time, and sort of your general experience about writing that piece.
Yeah. So at the time I was 17, which is a kind of already turbulent time for really anybody. I grew up in Denver in a kind of very, I don't know what to call it anymore, but it was a very like, my dad often had Rush Limbaugh playing. It was very that kind of family situation, and also we were kind of very often sort of on the brink of poverty. So kind of when I got to Juilliard, which is in New York City, it was like a complete, total culture shock for me. And I was going there to study with Milton Babbitt. I was like, completely starry-eyed, and was really glad to be in New York City, but it was also like just like a completely different world for me. And I had this kind of commission for an orchestral piece from the Colorado Symphony, where they wanted me to write a piece about mountains, being from Colorado, and they wanted a piece that they could play for youth concerts. They used to do youth concerts every year, and so they ended up playing this piece 14 times, which is like the most I've ever had any piece performed, because they did 14 youth concerts, and that made me, and made me very happy. But in the process of writing the piece, I was young and very, very green to begin with. I still sometimes wonder what it was that Babbitt saw in me that he wanted to be, invite me to come be his student. I was very honored, and I still don't quite know what it was, but he saw something there, and I was very grateful. So I came in with this piece to write, and I needed to have it done by the end of the semester, of the first semester. And I wanted to be like as ambitious as I could be, and like include a little bit of everything. But I was kind of embarrassed to take like something about the mountains to him in lessons. So like I kind of gave it this sort of more abstract title, but the original thing was sort of original idea was these three movements would be kind of like a sort of morning hike or something, and then a nocturnal sort of thing in the middle, and then like a forest fire at the end, like a kind of almost perfect 17-year-old thing. And things were still not always that good at home. When I would call back home, I was kind of a buffer in my family, someone who kind of did most of the mediating between different individuals, and so just a lot of extra stuff. And I had friends who were struggling with mental illness, and sometimes suicidal thoughts. I had just a great deal of like the bottom fell out on me in a lot of ways, on religion as well, because I hadn't really known anything else, and like suddenly I'm in this really really diverse place where every faith and no faith and everything is there. So I kind of entered here being the youngest person in my class at 17, and facing all of this personal stuff, and then also like trying to get this ambitious orchestral piece done. It was a difficult time, and to overcome it, that's kind of the important part of that question, is I'm not sure I actually did overcome it. I struggled a lot, and the piece has a lot of problems. It was something where I was trying out a lot of things. I think the first movement is charming but kind of hilarious also. Like it has like one of everything, which all the orchestral techniques that that I picked up from who knows where along the way. But so the story of what happened with this piece by the end was, so it got to the end of the semester. I still wasn't done, and as you noticed from the score, if you looked at it, it's a handwritten score. Back then I had, I think, finale version 3.1 or something. It came in this like pastel box with like 90s graphical art on floppy disks. And it was not easy to use for anything. Even just putting in dynamics was like just took so much time, and computers were slow. And so it actually was quite a bit quicker to handwrite the score. And so I finished the piece, I finished the score like a couple days before they were going to have the first rehearsal. And so then I had to make the parts, and I didn't have finale at home. This was like over winter break, and I so I had to handwrite the parts. And so I'm like, okay, this won't take too long. Again, another sort of underestimating the amount of time it takes. So like I start the piccolo part, and like 3 hours later, piccolo part's done, and I'm like, oh no, because I have all of these other, the complex string parts with lots of divisions and who knows what. So like, got to the day of the first rehearsal, I still wasn't done with the parts. My girlfriend at the time, now my wife, came over to like help write out some parts. My mom stayed up all night to write out parts. She's not even a musician really, so like she was just kind of like looking at the parts and trying to copy from the score what she saw there. It wasn't a good situation, and they actually ended up canceling the piece for a year and taking it up after I took care of it. This was the first really big chance that I had, and I felt like such a failure that I didn't overcome all of these problems in one semester. And looking back now, I give myself a lot more of a break there. Like anytime you have that kind of this was 23 years ago or so, and with just that much perspective, it's I kind of like if that person were my student, I would like want to take extra care of them and be kind to them, make sure that they have what they need. And it was it was really difficult to have the piece canceled for a year. And I'm actually really thankful that they ended up playing it again. And it did win. Every year, Juilliard has an orchestral competition, and it was selected to be performed on a concert with the Juilliard Orchestra, which is the one that I submitted. So I was, really happy about that. So, by the end of the first year, I was like a little bit more happy. But in the process of like finding myself as a composer and finding myself as a person, and I was in a long distance relationship with my wife, who now actually you've all met her. She works in the admissions office, Christina Chrisman. We've been together since high school, and there's just so much stuff going on. I probably didn't get as much out of my undergrad as I could have if I had been a little bit more grounded or had more experience. But I was kind of self-taught mostly prior to that, and that has some advantages as well, because that's always something that I can draw on. I'm most comfortable when I'm able to kind of sit down and reason through something on my own. And composition has a lot of those kinds of problems. Probably one reason why I stuck with it. So that's a long answer to the question, but it's an important question, and I wanted to answer it thoroughly and honestly.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was really interesting, especially just given and not like to make this all about me or anything, but just given there's interesting parallels between our own experiences.
Yeah, I don't know if you all know this, but Zach and I went to the same high school, and so a number of years apart. So we have that in common.
I didn't know about it.
Yeah. One of the many reasons I wanted to get Zach here to Eastman.
Oh.
Thanks. I appreciate the advocacy. My next question is about the use of harmony and texture in the three orchestral images.
Okay.
And it's this question has a lot of layers in it, so I'm going to
Okay.
try to ask them. I think asking them separately is probably better.
Okay.
So the first part is kind of about um, at the time, sort of what composers were you listening to, and is there any specific things that uh, composers or pieces that you kind of brought um, into this composition?
Yeah. I want to say kind of all of them, all of the composers. This was I didn't have a lot of CDs. This was back when you had to listen to music on CD or kind of over the radio, and that only gets you so far. So I would spend a lot of time at public libraries looking for things, and so suddenly I had this um, uh, library where I could go and listen to almost anything and have a score with me, listening to almost anything, and uh, it felt like I struck it rich somehow. That year, I actually had all of my CDs stolen from my dorm room. My entire CD collection wiped out, so I was kind of sad about that. But that also uh, kind of spurred me to, listen to lots of things that I didn't know about. So at the time, I was kind of, I came into my undergrad knowing lots of Second Viennese music and some Babbitt, some Lutoslawski, a lot of the sort of avant-garde war horses like um, uh, uh, Penderecki's Threnody, for instance, Ligody's Atmospheres, this kind of thing. The weirder and kind of I don't know, noisier the more I liked it. And in some ways, I'm sure that was a kind of like my sort of quiet teenage rebellion. But the so looking back then, I was learning Chopin and Mozart and rediscovering new kinds of things that Ligeti had done, and um, uh, learning the music of my peers and the teachers there, and my own teacher. So that's part of what makes especially that first movement sort of a grab bag of stuff. Is like there's little bits of, oh, there's a little bit from Prokofiev's Fifth Symphony, and a little bit maybe from Copland, and maybe a little bit from all of these different places. It is a 12-tone piece. That was something that I really wanted to do. Again, this time, kind of dividing the 12 tones into two groups of uh, diatonic hexachords related by tritones. And you can do all sorts of things harmonically with those because you can represent them as a stack of fifths. So, there's that one part in Rite of Spring where all the trumpets play in stacked fifths, and I just loved that. And so that occurs a bunch of times in the voicing of the chords of the piece. These diatonic things, sort of related by tritone, ends up coming out a lot. The opening little oboe melody is the first part of the row. It's a lot of nice things sort of built into the piece that would make it appropriate for a youth concert audience, and something that everybody could enjoy. Um, and by the second movement, I thought, okay, I need to do something else. So I think I recall uh, putting it's hard to remember how you did everything once you get a little bit older, but you could imagine imagine a collection A, B, C sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp. So like a diatonic hexachord, but kind of put like this. And then reducing all of the intervals there by wanting to get a new hexachord. That's what happened in the second movement. And in the third movement, there's a kind of transformation back from the very dissonant second one to these very open fifth sort of diatonic one. So, I was thinking about like large scale harmony and process and um, orchestration and, melody. All these things that I was trying to do with this piece, I ended up kind of doing, but it was, well, I've lost my train of thought, but maybe that answered the question.
Yeah, and you also actually answered like the next question that I had.
Okay.
So it's perfect.
My answers are discursive, so that's sometimes helpful.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna. I appreciate all of the responses. I think I'm gonna pass it along now since we're.
Okay.
It looks like we're almost out of time.
I'm sure, and I'm happy to stay here for however long you want. So.
So I have a question about your last piece that you posted over there, which is a tiny piece.
Yeah, the
And
little piece.
the little piece, I remember watching it. I mean, when it was actually video premiered at the time. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly that piece.
Yeah.
So it was very well edited, and there was a questions about that particular piece. So
Okay.
how much did the time spent on video production compared to the time spent on composition? Because the video actually synchronized with your composition very well, and that was really nice, well made. So there was a question about your video media or your experiences in the past that's related to video works.
I did that piece again, kind of at the last possible moment. So I wrote it down in a day, did the electronics in a day, in the same day, and then learned it that day. And recorded it at about 5 a.m. the next day. So it was like another kind of all-nighter sort of thing. And, at 40 years old now, all-nighters are very different from when they were at when I was a lot younger. But, I had to kind of also simulate some of the things that my girls used to like to put on me at the time. So like a lot of that stuff, I had to put on or take off in order to do it. But they weren't there. They would not have been able to be there and not just giggle the entire time. So yeah, it was all one day, and I was exhausted by the end. My furnace kept coming on, and I couldn't record while the furnace was on, so I had to stop and restart lots and lots of times. That took a lot of time. The video editing was actually only about 10 minutes. It was easy just to do these jump cuts. I can't even remember what I used. I think I probably just used QuickTime because it was available and easy to use. And so, yeah, it was that was the shortest part of it. Everything else took a bit longer. Actually, learning the piece took probably the longest.
And I believe that you played the right note.
A few I'm not sure about, but I think I got all of them. This is a very difficult instrument.
Exactly.
For intonation. I can barely, it's so small I can barely cover the holes. And so there's not a lot of opportunity to actually play the right note. So, yeah.
Yes,
I actually have my little guy here too. This was the last. Yeah. Is that on my shoulder at the end? This is a praying mantis that I made for my kids. It's knit, and I am very. I keep it with me sometimes just because it reminds me of family. They love it as well. They play with it all the time. So So it was kind of like just a tribute to them to have it kind of be at the end of the piece.
Yes. I mean, speaking of that, Mantis, I think there are a lot of humors in your pieces, including your tiny pieces. Do you purposefully sometimes put your humor in it, or do you sometimes, like, even though you didn't mean to, you put some satires or something? Is there any real?
Yeah, I sometimes do put humor into pieces, especially if I know the person I'm writing the piece for or about. One of the pieces I shared last year with the symposium was a piece that I wrote for my wife on, I think, the occasion of having known her for 20 years. And the there were a lot of sort of little inside jokes in the piece that found their way in, little things like uh, almost like little dust bunnies under the bed or something, that find their way in. But yeah, absolutely. Uh, I used to, when I was a lot younger, I used to kind of want to be more serious. And I've always had this problem of like people thinking that I'm younger than I actually am. And, uh, I like that now, but I didn't like that at, when I was 20 or 25. And so like uh, one of the ways to, if you're serious all the time, it is sort of like, I thought it was a sign of maturity. It's really not. I've gotten a lot more funny, I think, having grown a little bit older,
I mean,
and a lot more willing to do like cheesy things and funny things.
really.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of being serious, I mean, there were a lot of questions because since you put all this life crisis that you have been through, there
Yeah.
are a lot of comments and questions about it as well. So, I mean, what advice that you can give, I mean, to the students who are also writing music,
Yeah.
such a difficult pandemic?
Yeah. I wanted to I wanted to do this mostly because I know that this is a difficult time, and like it's nice to be able to talk about difficult times during difficult times. And it just reminded me of something my kids came up with. They invented a little song, "The truth about the truth, the truth about the truth." Anyway, so difficult times about difficult times. Um, I think what I wanted to do with this grouping of pieces was to sort of just, in composition, it's often really hard to be honest about the struggles that we go through. Sometimes struggles come across as like weakness, or like you're failing and everybody else is thriving. Um, but and there are some environments, of course, that are toxic, that people will take advantage of any kind of weakness that you show. And I hope that Eastman is not like that. When I came to Eastman from Juilliard, it was a huge change in atmosphere. But no, look, I just wanted to share with you times when like I did a piece, and then like after that I was totally gutted for with all of these pieces except the very last one. But the you know after the orchestral images, that little bit of failure I learned a lot from. Apparently not enough, because I'm always like underestimating the amount of time something is going to take, and that's life as a composer probably. Um, all of these were kind of at big points in my life too, like leaving family, getting engaged, and finishing my coursework. So uh,
All Eastman students know about.
yeah, after So the story of Interface Chapel was that I was late with everything, like chronically late with everything, to the point where in the 3 days before, I might have even mentioned this I was up for 3 days straight, totally just uh, uh, missed Valentine's Day, uh, and I was fighting a monitor that kept like turning off, like everything was going wrong, and I was just like so tired and wanted to give up, and found a way to push through. All of the purely electronic pieces were done the morning of the performance. I have no actual recollection of actually doing them, so they're kind of like, I don't know how I did them. I didn't save any of the like source files of where it came from. So these like my own piece is a mystery to me because I've kind of blocked it out a little bit. Also the score for Hall of Mirrors, I completely forgot that I made a score for it. And it's these are things that you know at the time I felt like I had to cover up in order to um, sort of be a professional composer. And in a lot of ways, that's not really healthy because, other people have similar struggles. And if you don't talk about them with people, they can just sort of sit on your shoulder and scream in your ear uh, until like eventually they don't. But that eventually can take a very long time.
Thank you so much for your answer. I mean, I can relate to that definitely because since we are all going through this pandemic and all these changes, sudden changes in terms of our life. For the last questions that I
Mhm.
personally have from the students is about your specific preferences and your composition styles. So, for example, I mean, as time goes by, it was your preference hasn't changed. I mean, because you have been through a lot of a lot of experiences and a lot of adversities that you had to overcome. So, could you tell us more about it?
Yeah, my style has never really settled on anything, and I kind of hope that it doesn't. I think one of the actually most pernicious things that we tell young composers is that you have to find your voice, and that's a great deal of responsibility to put on someone who's like actively exploring things. And I don't think I found my voice yet, and I don't think that there's I can't foresee actually ever like settling into a way of composing. If you do, that's fine. And sometimes I kind of envy like a Schwantner who has like this great um, sound world that he's able to draw from over and over again, or George Crumb. I can't do that. I get really anxious if I feel like am doing something again. Um, and for a lot of reasons, these pieces have sometimes negative associations, despite you know uh, loving them. Re Looking through sketches often brings back a lot of anxiety that way. Um, but one thing that I have been doing in all of my pieces is recently I've been quoting things in pieces. And sometimes they're just like little hidden things, like uh, 4 or 5 notes from a friend's piece or something that just happened to line up with my piece, just in order to kind of have it there. Not that anybody should hear it there, just it's a kind of like gift to myself and to my friend to have this little correspondence. Last 3 notes, in fact, of the little recorder piece are the first 3 notes of a piece by my friend Belginder Sekhan, called Pitch Dark Path, for horn and string quintet. And it's a piece that I conducted a number of times, and like that really he's been a person who, like, he's taken care of me a number of times, helped me with professional things, and he has 2 daughters, and so those little kinds of references are ways that I kind of build my whatever my style is. And I'm constantly listening to music, or something, audiobooks. Sometimes I get really anxious in silence. Having kids is great for that because they're
It's really impossible to have silence.
yeah, but no, I mean, I spent a lot of time, like, listening to the complete works of Bach and Haydn and Beethoven and Messiaen and Copland and 50 composers and jazz musicians and so forth. So I know a lot of music, and I can draw from a lot of things when I find an opportunity to quote something or other in a piece. And sometimes, the entire point of the piece or crux of the piece, like, is a place where this tiny little thing lines up and might go by in about 2 seconds, but provides a way of kind of grounding the entire process and nature of the piece.
Thank you so much.
That's kind of a vague answer, but it's one that I think is true.
Yes. And I have one last question, actually the
Okay.
real last question. So
Okay.
is there any pieces or projects or papers that you are currently working on that all the students have to check it out?
All the students have to check it out.
Maybe in the near future?
Yeah, I just submitted a paper for the Contemporary Music Review. They're doing a kind of Babbitt retrospective. And when Babbitt died in 2011, I was commissioned to write a memorial piece. And that memorial piece contains actually all the things I was just talking about, lots and lots of quotes, lots of compositional processes that I learned from him, things that we did in lessons, like down to like Bach chorales and looking at Brahms together. Everything that was in that fleeting relationship that I had with him found its way into the piece, and I was asked to actually write about those references as just as a paper of talking about how you could write music about music, or music about learning about music.
Like that song again.
Yeah, so there's that. I have a piece I've been working on for about 1.5 years now for soprano Jamie Jordan. I keep starting it and stopping it as pandemic stuff occurs. And Jamie Jordan and her boyfriend, who is a percussionist in the New York Film and electronics. So I hope to finish that by the end of the semester. I'm sure it'll take way longer than I think it will. It already has taken way longer than I thought it would. So those are the main things. I have 100 pieces kind of in my mind that I haven't started on, but I know that they're there, and they'll be coming out when I can get to them.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for your time as well as your interview for today. I think that's all the questions that we have for today. And yes, hope to see you soon, maybe in person, and stay safe.
Yeah, you all stay safe too. And if anybody wants to talk about any of this further, please feel free to write me an email, and we can have email correspondence or set up a time to just chat on Zoom.
Beautiful.
Thank you.